Hi. In this lesson I will show you another verb haber, and I will show you how to conjugate it in present, past and future, same as we did in our previous lesson with the verb tener, okay? I think it was tener, no, it was not tener, it was the verb estar, right? The verb estar. Now we will do the verb haber. The verb haber corresponds with the English verb to be and to have, right? So it's complicated because the verb to be in English has a correspondence with two Spanish verbs, that is verb ser and verb estar, okay? And in a way also has a correspondence with the verb haber, right? If, for example, if I say hay muchos niños, right? I'm saying there are many children, right? Here we use the verb haber as in English we use the verb to be, to say there are many children, right? Also, the English verb to have, has a correspondence with the Spanish verbs haber, yes, and tener, right? So it's as the example with the verbs to do and to make in English, right? Which you have to know when it applies to use either one or the other. Same thing in Spanish with these verbs. We need to know when we use tener or haber, right? And let me give you a small hint right now. For example, if we talk about, for example, verb haber, right? It has a correspondence with the English verb to have when it is used as an auxiliary verb, right? For conjugations. For example, in English, if we want to conjugate into the present perfect, we use the auxiliary verb to have, right? For example, let's conjugate the verb to run in present perfect, okay? We say, I have run, okay? Yes? So we are conjugating the verb to run, but the verb to have is the auxiliary verb, right? So we do need to use verb to have. In Spanish, for the present perfect and for all the other compound conjugations, our auxiliary verb is the verb haber, right? So how would we say I have run in Spanish? We would say yo he corrido. Okay? This is a bit untied there. Yo he corrido. This is a conjugation. Yo he corrido. I have run. Okay? So here the verb haber has a correlation with the verb to have. But if I say, if I want to say, I have a pen. No, not that example. There are two pens here, right? There are two pens. In Spanish I would say hay dos lapiceras. Okay? Hay dos lapiceras. Dos lapiceras. So we're using hay from the verb haber, right? That's why I tell you that verb haber it means to be and to have. So before we go deeper into the uses and functions of the verb haber, I will show you how to conjugate it in present, past and future, and in our next lesson I will show you some examples using this verb. So let's begin with present. Yo he, tú has, él ha or ella ha, nosotros hemos, vosotros habéis, ustedes han, ellos han. Okay? So if we want to conjugate into present perfect, we would take whatever verb we want to conjugate. If it is run, we say the past participle of verb correr, to run, is corrido, right? Of the past participle of the verb comer, to eat, is comido, right? So we would say yo he corrido means I have run. Nosotros hemos comido means we have eaten, right? Ella ha comido means she has eaten, right? So this is the conjugation we would use for present perfect, right? And this is the present tense of the verb haber. Let's see verb haber in past, in pasado. Yo hube, tú hubiste, él hubo, ella hubo, nosotros hubimos, vosotros hubisteis, ustedes hubieron, ellos hubieron, right? Always see that ustedes and ellos conjugate the same. You see? You see? It's always the same conjugation between ustedes and ellos. And ustedes and vosotros are synonyms. They mean the same thing, right? So, let's go to the future. Yo voy a haber. Tú vas a haber. Él va a haber. Or ella va a haber. Nosotros vamos a haber. Vosotros vais a haber. Ustedes van a haber. Ellos van a haber. That means they will have, right? If we add corrido, right, the past participle of the verb to run, it will be ellos van a haber corrido. That means they will have run. If we add comido, that means eaten, we would say ellos van a haber comido, or in English, they will have eaten. Future number 2. This is the most typical future conjugation of Spanish, right? In Spanish. Yo habré. Tú habrás. Él habrá. Nosotros habremos. Vosotros habréis. Ustedes habrán. Ellos habrán. Right? And this means exactly the same. They are synonyms, just different ways of conjugating the future. Okay? Typically, this is the Spanish way of conjugating the future, and I'm showing you this one because it's more similar to the English future, okay? To the English conjugation of the future. So, the same as we said, ellos van a haber corrido, we can say ellos habrán corrido, or ellos habrán comido, and it means exactly the same. They will have run, or they will have eaten, right? And there's one special conjugation, one single word for the verb haber, right? It's this short word, hay. Hay means there is. You say it hay, hay, just like that, hay. And this, you use it when you say hay algo, there is something. Hay una casa, there is a house, okay? Whenever you use there is in Spanish, you say hay, as simple as that. And it's written with H-A-Y, H-A-Y, different than the exclamation ay, right? This is the Spanish exclamation ay, means ouch, right? When you hurt yourself, this is a common way of exclaiming in Spanish, ay. But as you can see, it's written without an H. And why have I marked these in red? Because these correspond for he or she, and also for the subject pronoun it in English, right? For the abstract also. So if we want to say it will rain, sorry, yes, no, it will rain, no, because we are using verb haber. Let's see, there was a storm, okay? We would say hubo una tormenta. If we want to say there were many, we will say hubieron muchos, hubieron. If we want to say there will be a storm, we say habrá un temporal, okay? So these that I have marked in red are very much more used because it's there will be, there has been, there are, there is, right? So I will give you in the next lesson some examples using some sentences where we'll see how to use the verb haber, okay? So I'll see you in our next lesson. Goodbye. Hi. Continuing our previous topic from last lesson, today we will see some examples using sentences so we can see how to use the verb haber, right? The verb haber that we have been seeing how to conjugate in our previous lesson. So here we have some sentences. In black I have written the sentences in Spanish, in green to the right the meaning in English, okay? So let's take a look at the first one. We have aquí hay mucha gente. Aquí hay mucha gente. Gente means people. Aquí means here, right? Mucha means plenty. If you remember when we spoke about plenty and many, right? Mucha is plenty, muchas would be many. So gente is uncountable in Spanish, so it would be mucha. Unlike personas, for persons, which is countable, then we would say muchas, as you can see here, okay? However, since we cannot say in English there is plenty people, I have translated it as there is a lot of people. So, aquí hay mucha gente. Here, there is a lot of people, okay? So, here we are using the special conjugation of the verb haber, hay, for there is. And why do I say special conjugation? Because when we say there is in English, we are using the verb to be, right? But it's not a special conjugation of the verb to be, because the conjugation is a conjugation of the verb to be in simple present for the third person of the singular, right? For the third subject pronoun of the singular. That means for it, or he or she, right? Is. However, I, if you take a look at here, there's no conjugation of the verb haber that says I, H-A-Y, right? That's why in Spanish this is a special conjugation. That means literally there is. Next sentence. Ayer hubo tormenta. Ayer hubo tormenta. Yesterday there was storm, or a storm, right? Tormenta is storm. So when in Spanish, remember, when we want to individualize something, we would say una tormenta, right? Ayer hubo una tormenta. But we are talking about a storm in abstract, right? There simply was a storm. It was stormy. So we omit the article. And when I say we omit the article, I mean we don't use neither a definite article nor an indefinite article, right? As here, we totally omit the article. And here, look at this. Hubo means there was, right? Here, it's the past conjugation for he, she, or it, right? There was. In English it would correspond to it, right? To something abstract. There was something. Okay. But here we also use hubo, right? Hubo muchas personas. Hubo muchas personas. And look at this. Personas means persons. There were many persons. So persons is countable, and you can see here muchas personas, many persons, countable, and plural, right? However, we use hubo. Look, we say there is. Here I have translated it as there were, sorry. I translated like there were instead of saying well, in English actually it's for they were, and he, instead of saying there was, as it would be here, hubo would literally mean there was. Right? But we use hubo muchas personas, there was many people. Why? Because the conjugation of to be in plural here in the past is not used, right? If we want to use it like an auxiliary verb, we use hubieron, right? But when we want to use verb haber, hubieron, like there was or there were, in Spanish we would only use hubo, right? The singular. Either for a singular, for one here, one storm, or for plural, in this case many persons. We use hubo and hubo. It's as saying there is many persons. That would be the correct form, the correct way of speaking in Spanish. In Spanish, if we say there were, if we say hubieron muchas personas, it is incorrect. We have to say hubo muchas personas. There was many people, many persons. So this is something you have to keep in mind. Even if you say hubieron, probably everybody will understand what you're talking about, and many people would say hubieron, although it is wrong. Okay. So our next example is Va a haber una guerra. There will be a war. Guerra is war. So, there will be a war. We can also say it, habrá una guerra. Habrá una guerra. Here we are using future number 2. Here we are using future number 1. Va a haber, right? And they are exactly the same. They mean the same thing. Now, ¿has corrido mucho? Now we are using verb haber as an auxiliary verb, right? For the compound conjugations. In this case, we are conjugating in present perfect, yes? ¿Has corrido mucho? To us, right? So we are using this one. Verb haber in present, but we are adding the past participle of the verb correr, to run, right? This one. So we are saying, have you run a lot? Remember that in Spanish we can omit the subject, the person, to, because it's implied in the verb, in the conjugated verb. So it's okay to say, tú has corrido mucho, but we don't need to say tú, so we can omit it and we just say, has corrido mucho? Have you run a lot? And here, our last example is, hemos visto a Juan. Again, we have verb haber as auxiliary verb, okay? So this is, again, present perfect. So we are using verb haber in present tense. So hemos is a conjugation for nosotros, for we, nosotros. So nosotros hemos, we have. Nosotros hemos visto a Juan. Visto is a past participle for the verb ver. So, we were in our last example, our last sentence, hemos visto a Juan, right? We have seen Juan. We is implied in the verb hemos. Have seen Juan. So, visto is a past participle for the verb to see, right? Visto would be seen. Hemos visto, have seen. So we have seen Juan. This would be, if this is a present perfect, then this is a verb haber in present. Nosotros hemos, right? We have. Hemos visto a Juan. And when we say we have seen somebody, or we have seen something, in Spanish we cannot omit the article, right? Sorry, if not the article, at least the verb a, right? We have seen, literally this would be, we have seen to Juan, right? Hemos visto a Juan. If we want to say we have seen a house, we would say hemos visto una casa. If we want to say we have seen the house, we would say hemos visto la casa. But we say we have seen somebody, then we need to use this short word, a, right? To somebody. In this case, we have seen Juan. Okay, so we have aquí hay mucha gente, ayer hubo tormenta, hubo muchas personas, va a haber una guerra, or habrá una guerra. ¿Has corrido mucho? Hemos visto a Juan. All these sentences can either be said in a question, or in an affirmative way, okay? So, this is an affirmation, okay, right? Aquí hay mucha gente. Here, there is a lot of people. Well, here there are many people, right? We can add the question marks at the beginning. Yes? Let's use black to be more clear. If we add the question marks and we change our intonation as we speak, we would say, aquí hay mucha gente. Aquí hay mucha gente. Is there many people here? Are there many people here? Ayer hubo tormenta. Yesterday there was a storm. But if we add the question marks, we would say, ayer hubo tormenta. Yesterday, was there a storm? Hubo muchas personas. Let's add question marks. And now we transform this into a question. Hubo muchas personas. Were there many persons? Va a haber una guerra, or habrá una guerra. There will be a war. If we simply add the question marks here or here, right? We converted this into a question, and this says, ¿va a haber una guerra? Or ¿habrá una guerra? Will there be a war? Now here we already have a question. ¿Has corrido mucho? Have you run a lot? If we simply eliminate the question marks, we have has corrido mucho. You have run a lot, right? Now we have converted a question into an affirmative sentence. And the last example is, hemos visto a Juan. We have seen Juan. Let's add the question marks at the beginning and at the end. And now we have, hemos visto a Juan. Have we seen Juan? So, although the question may make not much sense, have we seen Juan? Grammatically it is perfect. So, you can see how easy, how simple it is in Spanish to build question sentences, because we don't have to change the order of the words. In English we have to change the order of the words if we want to build a question, right? In Spanish we don't need to. We just add the question mark and we have a question. We just eliminate the question marks and we have an affirmation, right? So this is all for today's lesson, and next lesson I want to show you the verb tener, right? To have. So we will see the conjugation of the verb tener. I see you next time. Hi, today we will continue conjugating some more verbs, and we already conjugated in present, past and future two of the most important verbs in Spanish. These are the verbs the verb ser and estar. And the previous lesson we conjugated also haber, so we have already conjugated three of the most important verbs in Spanish. And this is going to be the fourth, the verb tener. And why do I want to have these verbs taught first? Ser, estar, haber, and tener. Because these four verbs, these four Spanish verbs correspond to the two most important verbs in English, that are the verbs to be and to have. So with this one we will finish the last of these four very important verbs. We will conjugate it in presente, pasado, and futuro, right? So we will see conjugación del verbo tener. Conjugación del verbo tener. Verb tener is to have, right? However, verb tener also applies to situations where in English we use the verb to feel. Why? Because when we say, in Spanish, if we say, I feel cold, for example, in Spanish we don't use the verb to feel, right? That would be sentir. That would be the Spanish verb to feel. We use the verb to have. We would say, tengo frío, I have cold, because it refers to having the sensation of cold, right? So if we want to say, tengo ganas de hacer algo, I feel like doing something, we say tengo ganas de hacer algo, verb to have. Okay? But we'll see that in the next lesson, where we'll see some examples using this verb. Now let's start with the conjugation of verb tener in present. Yo tengo, tú tienes, él tiene, or ella tiene. Nosotros tenemos, vosotros tenéis, ustedes tienen, ellos tienen, right? For I have, you have, he has or she has, we have, you plural have, again you plural, you have, and they have, right? So Spanish way, Latin American way. Always take a look how ustedes and ellos, their conjugation is identical, right? Always, you see here, okay, identical. Tienen and tienen, van a tener, van a tener. Let's go to the past. Yo tuve, I had. Tú tuviste, él tuvo, or ella tuvo. Nosotros tuvimos, vosotros tuvisteis, ustedes tuvieron, and ellos tuvieron, for they had. Now, future tense, the one that is more similar to English. Yo voy a tener. Tú vas a tener. Él va a tener, or ella va a tener. Nosotros vamos a tener. Vosotros vais a tener. Ustedes van a tener. And ellos van a tener. See how simple, how easy it is to conjugate in the future using this form, right? It's as easy as it is in English, right? So for English, conjugation of the future, we just take the word will and then add the verb in infinitive that we want to conjugate, right? For example, I want to conjugate the verb to like into future tense. I will like, he will like, right? Same thing here. This remains always the same for whatever verb you want to conjugate, right? This will always remain the same. And you only add the verb in infinitive that you want to conjugate. In this case, it is the verb tener, to have. Right? So easy. And the typical future tense, the typical conjugation of future in Spanish. Yo tendré. Tú tendrás. Él tendrá. Or ella tendrá. Nosotros tendremos. Vosotros tendréis. Ustedes tendrán. Ellos tendrán. Okay? So, this and this these are identical, right? Different ways of conjugating the future, and they mean exactly the same. So, this is all for today's lesson, and next time I will show you some sentences where we will use these conjugations, right, so we can see how they are applied into real-life sentences, okay? So I see you in our next lesson. Goodbye. Hi again. Today we will see some sentences as examples of the verb that we have been conjugating in the previous lesson. We have seen verb tener conjugated in presente, pasado, and futuro. Yes? So now that we know how to conjugate the verb tener, or verb to have, we will see how to use it, right? I have left this all this information here so you can look at it, and I remind you that tener means to have, but in some cases it also means to feel, right? And we'll see that in the last examples we have here, the last sentences. So let's begin with our first sentence. We say, tengo un libro nuevo. Tengo un libro nuevo. Right? If we remember, libro is book, nuevo, new. So, I have a new book, or I have a new book, right? Remember that in Spanish, we usually first say or write the noun and later comes the adjective, right? It would be correct if we said tengo un nuevo libro, right? In the same order as in English. Un nuevo libro. But it's usually said libro nuevo. First the noun and later the adjective. And I strongly recommend that you get used to this way of structuring the sentences with first the noun and later the adjective in Spanish, because that will make it easier for you later to start seeing more complex sentences where it will be essential that you get used to using first the noun, later the adjective, right? So, I have a new book. And as usual, I always say the subject pronoun or the person is implied in the conjugated verb. So, tengo is present conjugation for the first person of the singular, for yo, for I. So, this is yo tengo un libro nuevo, or simply tengo un libro nuevo. Tengo is present tense, okay? Ayer tuviste fiebre. Ayer tuviste fiebre. This means yesterday you had temperature. Ayer tuviste fiebre. So this is past tense, right? Simple past here. Again, the person that is implied is tú, you, right? Mañana van a tener todo lo que necesitan. Mañana van a tener todo lo que necesitan. Mañana van a tener todo lo que necesitan. That means tomorrow they will have all that they need. Okay, again, the subject, the person they, is implied in the verb necesitan, right? So we have two persons, two subjects here. Van for they will, and necesitan, again, sorry, it's not two subjects, it's two verbs, right? Verb van a tener and necesitan. The subject is always the same one, they, right? So van a tener is future tense for ustedes or ellos, right? We don't know actually if it is they or if it is you plural, ustedes, right? So without a proper context, we cannot know if this here, van a tener, is they will have or you will have. You will have in the Latin American way of speaking, right? Because in Spain they would say vosotros vais a tener, for you will have. So another way for saying the same thing would be mañana tendréis. Sorry, tendrán. Mañana tendrán todo lo que necesitan, using future number 2. Would be here, right? Tendrán. Sorry, that's my cell phone. Let me hang up. Okay. So, mañana van a tener todo lo que necesitan, or mañana tendrán todo lo que necesitan. That means tomorrow they will have all that they need. Or if we're talking about ustedes, tomorrow you will have all that you need. Now, these two last examples, these two last sentences, we are using verb tener, but meaning to feel, right? We said before that when we say I feel cold or I feel hot, in Spanish we use the verb tener, right? Yo tengo frío or yo tengo calor. We say I have cold or I have hot or warm, yes? That's how we would say it in Spanish, referring to the sensation of cold, right? And also, we would say, I feel like going. We would say, tengo ganas de ir, right? It would be like, I have the desire to go, yes? So, here, tenemos mucho frío, or simply tenemos frío. It means we feel cold, or we feel very cold. Mucho is very in this case, right? So, tenemos frío. Tenemos is present tense for nosotros, for we. We have cold or we feel cold, right? And the other example, sorry, let me underline tenemos. The other example is tengo ganas de ir. I feel like going. I feel like going. Ganas will be, it literally means desire or will of doing something or of something, right? So this would literally mean I have the will or desire of going or to go, right? Tengo ganas de ir. So you can see in these two cases where in English we would use the verb to feel, here in Spanish we use the verb to have, right? So that's all for today. So we have seen the verb to have, the verb tener, and now we'll stop for some lessons doing verbs, right? So we'll see some vocabulary, some, for example, some family relations like hi there. Today in our lesson we will see and learn the names of the family members in Spanish. These are relaciones de parentesco. Relaciones de parentesco. These are what we call the relatives, right? The family relationships in English. And this word parentesco sounds like parents, right, in English. However, it means it refers to the relatives. And this is a false friend word. Look, the word parientes, right? It's very similar to the word parents in English, right? That means our parents are our father and our mother. However, the word parientes refers to the relatives, right? And that includes father and mother. So our parientes would be father, mother, our brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, grandparents, grandchildren, everybody. All our family members are our parientes, okay? And so who are our parents? How do we call parents in Spanish? We call them padres, right? The plural for father, right? The plural for the word padre is also the word we use for parents, right? So let's begin seeing and learning some of the words related to family members, right? And these are the most immediate ones, the ones that belong to our home, right? I'm not, in this lesson we will not see grandparents, uncles, aunts. We'll just keep the circle smaller, okay? So let's see the first. Padre means father, padre. Madre is mother, madre. Later, papá is dad, papá. And mamá is mom. So padre would be the more formal word, right? And papá or dad is more colloquial and familiar. Madre and mamá, also synonyms, but madre is more formal, mamá is more familiar. Hijo is son, hijo, and daughter would be hija, hija. Then the word hijos, here, hijos, means two things. It means the plural of hijo, right? So it would mean sons, in plural, hijos, and it also means children, right? So, for example, if I'm a father and I have a son and a daughter, these are my hijos, my children, okay? Hijos. Then we have the word family is familia. Familia, 3 syllables. The word for brother is hermano, starting with H or H. Hermano, hermano. And our sister will be our hermana, hermana. And same as with the word padres that we said at the beginning, the word hermanos, hermanos means 2 things. It means plural for brother, so hermanos means brothers, right? But it also means brethren. And for example, if I have 2 brothers, these are my hermanos. If I have 1 brother and 2 sisters, they are also called, all the group are called hermanos, right? And me, I and my sister, we are hermanos, we are brethren, right? Hermanos. And padres, as we said at the beginning, means fathers, right? The plural for father, and also means parents. Yes? Okay, so this is all for today's lesson. We will see in the next class some examples with sentences where we will be using some of these words, and after that we will continue with more new words, more vocabulary related to family members. Okay, we'll go further seeing and learning grandparents, uncles, in-laws, etc. Okay, so I hope to see you next class. Hi there. Today, before we see some more family members, before we learn more names, more words, we will see some examples, some sentences using the vocabulary we learned in the previous class, okay? So we were talking about padre, madre, hijo, hija, hijos, familia, papá, mamá, hermano, hermana, hermanos, and padres. Now I have written some 5 sentences where we will see the application of some of these new words, okay? And in black I have written the sentences in Spanish, in green the meaning in English. So let's start with the first one. Tengo una hermana. Somos dos hermanos. This is, I have one sister. We are 2 brethren. Okay? So you see that the word brethren, hermanos, although hermanos is the plural for brother, for hermano, it's also used for brethren. So hermanos can include a sister and a brother, or 2 sisters and a brother, or 3 brothers and a sister, or even generically 2 sisters only, right? So, tengo una hermana. Somos dos hermanos. As usual, I will remind you that the conjugated verb already brings implicitly the subject pronoun, right? So here I can omit, as I did, the word yo, the word I, right, the subject. And here I'm also omitting the word nosotros or we, because it's already implied in somos. We are, okay? Next. Mis padres se llaman Juan y Ana. Mis padres se llaman Juan y Ana. So Juan and Ana are two given names. This is a masculine name, a feminine name. So se llaman means are called. And this is a reflexive verb, right? In Spanish, when you say that somebody is called, you would literally say he calls himself, okay? Somebody calls himself, I call myself Rodrigo, she calls herself Ana, they call themselves whatever, okay? So, se would be the themselves, okay? Because it's a reflexive verb. Llamar is to call. Look. Llamar is to call. But llamarse is a reflexive verb that means to be called something. So, my parents are called Juan and Ana. Okay? So, parents would be the word padres. Padres includes my father and my mother. En mi familia somos 4 personas. En mi familia somos 4 personas. This means in my family we are 4 persons, right? That would be my father, my mother, and 2 brethren. That would be me and my sister, hermana, right? So all this is actually related. Mis padres tienen 2 hijos, un hijo y una hija. Mis padres tienen 2 hijos, un hijo y una hija. This means my parents have 2 children, 1 son and 1 daughter. You can see here how the word hijos, that literally is the plural for hijo, for son, so hijos would be sons, but it also means children, a generic word for children that includes daughters and sons, right? Mamá y mi hermana fueron a ver a papá. So, mamá y mi hermana fueron a ver a papá. So, this means mom and my sister went to see dad. Okay? So, here we have this extra word that we don't need in English. This would be went to see to dad, right? But this word a is required in Spanish. You are going to see to somebody in Spanish, okay? Ver a alguien, somebody. So here you can see we have mamá would be the more familiar way of addressing madre, mother, okay? So these are some few examples to use the new words, the new vocabulary we have learned in the previous lesson. And in our next class, I will show you some more family members, some more names for family members, right? Some we'll go a bit broader and see grandparents, uncles, okay? So I hope I see you in the next lesson. So goodbye. In today's lesson, we will learn a new phrase, the phrase ¿Dónde está? Or better said, the question ¿Dónde está? Which means where is it or where is. So, since the Spanish verbs always bring the subject pronoun implicit in the conjugation, this ¿Dónde está? Can mean where is or where is it, right? The it is already implied in the conjugation está. Está corresponds to the conjugation of the third person of the singular. He, she, it, right? So, estar is the verb estar, which means to be, right? One of the acceptions of the word to be, of the verb to be. So, ¿Dónde? Means where. Here we have several examples where we use the question phrase ¿Dónde está? Or ¿Dónde están? Which means where are they, right? Está is for the third person of the singular, and están, here with an N at the end, is for the third person of the plural, for they, right? So let's see this phrase. ¿Dónde está papá? ¿Dónde está papá? This means, where is dad, right? The word papá means dad, the informal word for padre. Padre is father, papá is dad. Está afuera. He is outside. The word he, the subject pronoun, is implicit in está, right? Está, we know it's the conjugation for the third person of the singular. So está afuera, which means is outside, is he is outside. ¿Dónde están las frutas? ¿Dónde están las frutas? This means, where are the fruits? Okay? This is the singular would be fruta without the S. This is a feminine noun, okay? La fruta, the fruit. Están with the N is plural, okay? So, where are the fruits? ¿Dónde están las frutas? Están allí. Están allí. They are there. Están means they are. Allí means there. And allí, if you remember, is exactly the same as allá, right? Both mean there. Allí and allá. If the word for here is aquí or acá. These are also synonyms. Aquí or acá mean here. Allí or allá mean there. ¿Dónde está la parada de ómnibus? ¿Dónde está la parada de ómnibus? This means, where is the bus stop? Okay? Remember, in Spanish, when we want to assign something to something else, right? We need the word de here, de, right? So bus stop, right? We have two nouns there. In Spanish, we invert the order, right, in relation to English, and we use the connecting word de. So parada de ómnibus means bus stop, right? Parada is a stop. So, ¿dónde está la parada de ómnibus? Where is the bus stop? Or, ¿dónde está la calle Blanes? ¿Dónde está la calle Blanes? Where is the street Blanes? Right? Blanes is the name of a street in Uruguay. Está allá. It is there. It is there. So, if we ask somebody, ¿dónde está la calle Blanes? And they answer, está allá, we will answer back, ¿allá dónde? Right? There, where? ¿Allá dónde? ¿Allá dónde? There, where? Okay? And then we expect to get more specifications, right? So we have ¿dónde está? Means where is or where is it. ¿Dónde están? Is where are or where are they, right? So if we ask just ¿dónde están? And that's all the phrase, that means where are they? If we continue the phrase, the sentence with some more information, then it's where are whatever we are asking for. So the word ¿dónde, that is the main focus of these phrases, is the means where, okay? So this is all for today as for ¿dónde está and dónde están? Where are they? Where is there? Or where is it? Okay? So we will continue little by little with some more question phrases like these, and so we'll be doing one lesson with some question words, then we go back to some more grammar, okay? So I see you next class. Goodbye. I almost forgot we had to continue with the names of the family members, and before we have seen the words for father, mother, children, marriage, okay? So the closest family members, and we had said that we would go broader and learn some more names of family members. So today we will see the words for grandfather, grandmother, grandparents, grandchildren, great-grandparents, right? So we will begin with grandfather, which is abuelo. Abuelo means grandfather. Masculine words, males, and an O, right? This is a general rule that always has some few exceptions, okay? So, abuelo finishes with O and is grandfather. Abuela, ending with an A, is a feminine. Is a grandmother. Then we have the grandparents are abuelos, right? So it is the masculine turned into plural. So abuelos means grandparents, and it also means grandfathers, okay? So through the context we will know if we are referring to grandfathers or to grandparents when we say abuelos, although usually people refer to grandparents when they use this word. Bisabuelo means great grandfather. Bisabuelo. Bisabuelo. Okay? Has the prefix bis, right? Bis means twice. Twice. And this would be its twice grandfather, right? One generation above the grandfather. Bisabuela is great grandmother. And bisabuelos are the great grandparents. Bisabuelos. Then we have the great grandparents, okay? Tatarabuelos. So, let's see. The grandparents are abuelos. The great grandparents are bisabuelos. And the great grandparents are the tatarabuelos. Okay? Tatarabuelos. Always the accent is in the word that has the tilde here, right? We know it's tatarabuelos. So there are rules as to where goes the accent in words that don't have the tilde, and that we will see further on because it's more complex. Okay? So if we want to go even further and say the great grandfather, okay, or grandparents, we add as many tatara as you want, okay? So as in English you add great to great to great, here we add tatara, 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 okay? With the difference that for tatarabuelos we use only one tatara and we use twice great in English, right? This would be the great grandparents. So it got complicated, right? So nieto is the grandson. Nieta is the granddaughter. So ending in O is the boy, ending in A is the girl, right? Masculine, feminine. Nietos, as usual, in Spanish, you take the masculine, you turn it into the plural, and then you have nietos, the grandchildren, okay? Bisnieto would be the great-grandson. Bisnieta, the great-granddaughter. And bisnietos will be the great-grandchildren. Bisnietos. And tataranietos are the great-grandchildren, right? So same rule as here, exactly the same, only that instead of abuelo it is nieto. Bisabuelos will be bisnietos. Tatarabuelos, tataranietos, okay? So we have the first for grandparents and grandchildren, abuelos and nietos, right? Then for great grandparents and parents and great grandchildren, we add the prefix bis, right, to either of them. Bisabuelos, bisnietos, that is great grandparents, great grandchildren. And for great grandchildren or great grandparents, we add tatara, this prefix, okay? Tatara and tatara. So it would be tatarabuelos and tataranietos for great grandparents and great grandchildren, right? So this is all for today, and next class I will show you some sentences where we will see some examples applying these new words that we have just learned, okay? So I hope I see you next class. Goodbye.
In this lesson we will see some sentences applying the vocabulary we learned in the previous class, okay? We were talking about abuelo, abuela, abuelos, bisabuelos, bisnietos, right? All the grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, grandchildren, all those, okay? And today we were going to see some sentences, right? So where we would see how to use these words, how they are used in sentences. So in black you can see the translation in English, and in blue the sentence in Spanish. Let's begin with the first one. Mis abuelos se llaman Juan y Clara. Mis abuelos se llaman Juan y Clara. My grandparents are called Juan and Clara, right? Are called. Yes, se llaman. Yo me llamo, I am called, or my name is, right? If this would be, if we want to say my name is Juan, we would say I am called Juan. That's how you say it in Spanish. Yo me llamo Juan. Él se llama Juan. He is called Juan, okay? Mis abuelos tienen 4 nietos. Mis abuelos tienen 4 nietos. This means my grandparents have 4 grandchildren. My grandparents have 4 grandchildren. Yo soy el nieto mayor. Yo soy el nieto mayor. This is, I am the eldest grandson, okay? In Spanish, remember, the most common way is to first say the noun and later comes the adjective, right? So it's the other way around in relation to English, yes? So in English we would say eldest grandson, right? First the adjective and later the noun. In Spanish, the way to say it that doesn't sound awkward would be first the noun, later the adjective. Mi prima Inés es la nieta menor. Mi prima Inés es la nieta menor. My cousin Inés is the youngest granddaughter. Okay, again, first comes the word for granddaughter, the noun, and later comes youngest, the noun. Prima is the feminine for cousin, right? We have cousin, a male cousin would be primo, a female cousin will be prima with a, right? Mis bisabuelos son muy viejos. Mis bisabuelos son muy viejos. Or in normal speed, mis bisabuelos son muy viejos. This means my great-grandparents are very old, right? Viejos is the masculine plural for old, okay? Viejo is old for masculine singular. Viejos is old for masculine plural, okay? And for feminine plural would be viejas with as. And the last is mis tatarabuelos ya fallecieron. Mis tatarabuelos ya fallecieron. Mis tatarabuelos ya fallecieron. This means this is my plural, right? We have mi for my singular and mis with an s for my plural, when we refer to a plural object, right? In this case, the great-great-grandparents. So, my great-great-grandparents already passed away. Okay? In English we would say have already passed away. In Spanish we would use the simple past to say it. It's more commonly used. We would just say my great-great-grandparents already passed away. And fallecieron, I translated it as passed away, right? Comes from the verb fallecer. Here. Fallecer. Okay? It's not the verb to die. The verb to die is morir. Morir. But it has a harder connotation, right? A harsher impact. Same as the verb to die in English, right? To die, when we are talking about relatives, or it sounds too harsh, right? So we use the smoother, the softer verb to pass away. In Spanish it's the same. The verb morir is too objective, too rough. So when we refer to people, and mainly to our relatives or acquaintances, we talk about fallecer. We use the verb fallecer, which is much softer, okay? If we use the verb morir, of course it is correct, but it's better to use the verb fallecer. So fallecieron is the conjugation for simple past of the verb fallecer for the third person of the plural, for they, right? Ellos fallecieron, talking about my great-great-grandparents. So this is all for today's lesson, and we will continue seeing some new phrases and question words, and then we will also continue seeing some more names for family members. I hope I see you next time. Bye. Hi students. Today I want to show you some rules on which cases we have to begin a word with a capital letter in Spanish. There are fewer rules or fewer cases for Spanish language for beginning a word with a capital. For example, in English we begin always the word I, right, the subject pronoun, with a capital, right, with a capital I. Also, languages and nationalities always begin with capitals. However, in Spanish, all those words do not necessarily need to begin with a capital letter unless they begin the sentence, right? So here I will show you some cases, which are the rules on when a word needs to begin with a capital letter in Spanish, okay? So let's begin with the most common one, right? The given names, right? In Spanish we call that nombres propios. Nombres propios. This means nombres means names, and propios means own, right? Of somebody's own. So this would mean literally own names, right? Or given names. So given names in Spanish always begin with a capital letter, the same as in all other languages that I know at least, right? So Santiago will always begin with an S, right? Santiago. Juan. Pedro. Yes? Also, given names include names of countries like España for Spain, or Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos for United States, right? Uruguay. Uruguay. This is my country. Uruguay. And given names also include the names of institutions, right? So when we refer to the church, right? To the church, we always write it with a capital I, right? iglesia, right? Because it's a universal institution. This usually is written with a capital I, the church, iglesia. Because when you talk about the church, la iglesia, you're specifically talking of that institution whose name is la iglesia, okay? However, if you want to refer to iglesia, like in general, an institution, a church, right? Without speaking specifically of the church, then you can use iglesia or iglesias with a lowercase I, okay? And countries are given names, right? So they always begin with capital. Also, the Earth, right? The planet Earth, the Moon, those are given names. So if we talk about the Earth in Spanish, that is la tierra. Tierra for Earth. Since tierra is the given name of our planet, it also begins with a capital T always, right? It's a given name, nombre propio. Same as Jupiter, Mars, right? So the names of the planets also are capital given names. So they also begin with a capital letter. And so like that we have to generalize all the given names will always begin with capitals, right? Given names are not exclusively names from the people, from persons and animals. All given names in general. Same as titles, a title of a film, a title of a book, right? That is also written with capitals. For example, if we want to say the film La Guerra de los Mundos, the War of the Worlds, that will also be written with capitals, every word. The other rule is the acronyms. In Spanish we call that siglas. Siglas. Those are acronyms in Spanish. 2 syllables. Siglas. Acronyms are always written with capital letters, same as in English, right? For example, ONU, right? In Spanish you say ONU. ONU. This means Organización de las Naciones Unidas, right? Organization of the, sorry, yes, Organización for organization, Nations United. So this is the United Nations, the UN, right? Also, EEUU means Estados Unidos or USA. Then we have OMC, la OMC, the OMC. This is the WTO, the World Trade Organization, right? Organización Mundial de Comercio. Yes? And another rule for writing always a word with capital at the beginning is the words with special institutionalized meaning. And I really don't know the name for this rule. I just invented this name, right? But what I mean with this is these words like law, state, right? That refer to an institution, right? That is universal, that is very important and always need to begin with a capital letter. Always, no matter where the word is standing in the sentence. So the word for derecho, when referring to law, to the law, right, always begins with D. The word derecho has another meaning, means right or upright, yes, or ahead, right? But when the word derecho has any of those other meanings, it does not have to begin with a D, with a capital D. Only when derecho refers to the law, then it always needs to begin with a capital. Another example is the word estado. right? Estado, state, the state, right? When you refer of the state, yes? El estado, estado always begins with a capital E, right? We're talking about a national state, a country, right? When the word state refers to country, it begins with a capital. When the word state refers to the state of mind, to the state of how something is standing, or if something is fit or broken or not, that case of the meaning of state does not have to begin with a capital, okay? So, well, these are the rules I just remember. I think these are the only cases of words that need to begin with capitals in Spanish, always. And of course, I think I don't have to mention it, but always when at the beginning of a sentence, right, that word always begins with a capital. But that's the same in English and probably in all other languages, right? So the first letter of every new sentence, that always begins with a capital. And these are all the rules then for beginning with capitals, right? So just keep that in mind for whenever you have to write these cases. You always need to begin with capital letter. So that's all for today. I see you next class. Bye. Today I want to teach you something about question words in Spanish. These are the typical question words, right? Or the W words in English, right? Those question words: where, how, when, which, right? Why. Well, of course, how doesn't begin with a W, but these are some of the typical question words in Spanish. I missed actually cuál, which means which, right? And what I want to show you here is that these question words always have this little line here, right? That we call tilde in Spanish. Yes? This is a tilde. And always when we are using the question words for inquisition, they always need to have the tilde, right? And why is that important? Because all these words have other meanings as well. And there also exists the same word without the tilde, which means something different, right? Or is used for a different purpose. For example, cuando for when has a tilde, and cuando, right, doesn't have a tilde when we are explaining something, right? So for example, if I ask, when will she come, right, that when is cuando with a tilde. If I answer, if I give the information, for example, I say, she will come when she finishes, right? That second when she finishes, is this second cuando that does not have a tilde, okay? ¿Por qué? This means why. ¿Por qué? You see, it is two words. ¿Por qué? Right? Separated because it is two words. And the que has a tilde here. This means why. However, if we write it all together and without the tilde, porque, this means because. The word for how, como, has a tilde. This means how. However, if we write the word without a tilde, como means since or as, right? For example, let me tell you. Como no comí, me siento mal. Since I didn't eat, I feel upset or I feel bad, okay? So como means since or as without the tilde. Cuánto for how much, right? Or cuántos if we add an S for how many, yes? Or cuánto or cuántos without the tilde. So with the tilde means how much. Without the tilde can mean whatever or the more, right? Later in our next lesson I will show you some examples using these words in sentences, okay? Then the word for where, dónde, yes? When it refers to an inquisition, it needs a tilde, dónde, where. But when it does not refer to the inquisition, right, to the interrogation, it doesn't use the tilde, it doesn't have a tilde, dónde. For example, where is the apple? ¿Dónde está la manzana? Right? But now an example using dónde without a tilde. For example, donde sea que estés, that would mean wherever you are. Donde sea que estés. Or another case, él guardó la manzana donde debe estar. He kept the apple where it should be, right? Where it belongs. So that where, right, it does not refer to an inquisition, to an interrogation, but to the information of the answer, okay? Or it's an affirmation. So that is the donde that does not carry the tilde, yes? So with the tilde is always when it refers to an inquisition, to an interrogation. Then for who, quién, or quiénes, right? So for who singular would be quién. For who plural would be quiénes, right? But if we write it without the tilde, quién or quiénes, it means whoever, right? For example, who came last night? ¿Quién vino anoche? Or here we can say, quien sea que haya venido se fue temprano. Whoever came early, whoever came yesterday left early, right? The second case, you see, it's not an inquisition, right? It's just information, an affirmation. And then we don't use the tilde. And this other case, que and que. So, que with a tilde means what, right? Inquisition, interrogation. And que without the tilde, right, the second case, the second word, means that. For example, she said that she won't come. Ella dijo que no vendrá, right? That is que, okay, without the tilde. Another one I had missed, cuál, which, and cuál. So when it's an interrogation, it carries the tilde, okay? And when it's just an affirmation, right, it does not carry the tilde, right? This would mean which. Which. So which and which. Okay? So you keep in mind the differences of the meaning and when the words need to carry the tilde. In our next lesson I will show you some sentences where we will use these words so I can show you how they are used. In this lesson I will show you some examples using the previous words we have learned before in these sentences. So we were seeing how these question words, right, they all need a tilde, right, when they refer to the inquisitive meaning, right? When they are the question words, like which, when, how, which, who, right? When they refer to an interrogation, they all need this little line here we call tilde. But they also have another meaning, another use, when they do not carry the little line, the tilde, right? And there the the meaning can be similar or quite different. So that is what I have shown you in the previous lesson, and here I will show you some examples using these words with one meaning or the other meaning. Yes, so you can see how they are used and how their meaning changes. Our first question, here in black you can see I have written in Spanish, and in green the meaning in English. Our first sentence is: ¿Cuándo vas a venir a casa? When will you come home? When will you come to home, right? You need to say to home in Spanish. A casa. ¿Cuándo vas a venir a casa? Here the word cuando is the first one. You see, with the tilde, it means when. Yes? Inquisition. The second case, cuando without the tilde, is the second case, means when we give information, when we are answering, right? Not the inquisition, not the interrogation. So we will say, cuando llegue el momento, voy a ir. Cuando llegue el momento, voy a ir. This means, when comes or arrives the moment, I will go. So when the moment comes or when the time comes, I will go. Now with cómo and cómo. The first case, cómo, how, is cómo llegaste, cómo llegaste, how did you arrive. Llegaste is the past tense of the verb to arrive, right? Of course, as usual, in Spanish we can always omit the subject pronoun because it is implicit in the conjugation. So, while in English we have to say, how did you arrive? In Spanish we simply ask, how arrived, right? ¿Cómo llegaste? The second, another way, the second como without the tilde means since or as, right? For example, here, este trabajo es como el anterior. Este trabajo es como el anterior. This means this job or work, trabajo, is as or like the previous one. Anterior means previous or previous one. So you can see the word como here without the tilde means as or like. Yes, similar to. This means this job is like the previous one. Now we had skipped por qué, yes, and por qué. The first case, por qué, with a tilde, right? Two words. Por qué fuiste? ¿Por qué fuiste? This means, por qué means why. Why did you go? Right? Why did you go? Fuiste means did you go. here in this case because it's a question. Fuiste is the past tense of the verb ir, that is to go. The answer, right? Porque, that means because. You can see that the word goes all together and without the tilde. Porque tenía que ir. Because I had to go. Ir means go. Que means that. But here, when we use the verb tener, or to have, when we say have to in Spanish, we use tener que, right? So, for the verb have to in Spanish, we use the word que. With the same meaning, we use the word to in English. Have to go. Tener que ir. Porque tenía que ir. Because I had to go. Now, cuánto and cuánto. The first cuánto with a tilde refers to the inquisition, to the interrogation. How much? How much cost this? ¿Cuánto costó esto? ¿Cuánto costó esto? How much cost this, or how much did this cost? And second case, without the tilde, it doesn't refer to an inquisition anymore. Cuanto más pide, más le dan. Cuanto más le piden, más le dan. Sorry. Cuanto más pide, más le dan. The more he asks, right? The pronoun he is implicit here in the conjugated word pide, means asks. The more he asks, more they give him, right? Le dan is they, le is they give him. Another use of this second cuanto without the tilde is te daré cuanto desees. Te daré cuanto desees. I will give you as much as you want. Right? Desees is a hypothetical tense, so we haven't seen this, we haven't learned it. But I want to show you just the meaning and the use of the word cuanto. And another utilization of the word cuanto here, right? Sorry, of the word como without the tilde is como no comí, tengo hambre. The word como as since. For example, here we see, since I didn't eat, I'm hungry. Since I didn't eat, comí is didn't eat. Sorry, comí is ate, right? Only that while in English we say didn't eat, right? The past is conjugated in the verb to do. In Spanish, since we don't need the auxiliary verb to do to conjugate the past, the past is in the verb, and then we use the word no or no to negate, right? So instead of saying didn't eat, we would say no ate, right? So since I no ate, since I no ate, or since no I ate, I have hunger. That would be the word-by-word translation. That, of course, it means since I haven't eaten or since I didn't eat, I'm hungry, right? Como, no comí, tengo hambre. Como no comí, tengo hambre. So, here, as you can see, we have cuando with tilde and cuando without the tilde. We have como with a tilde for inquisition or interrogation, and como without the tilde with a different meaning, right? We have por qué, two words with a tilde for inquisition, and porque, one single word. You see, we just joined the two short words into one word, porque, and we removed the tilde. Cuánto, how much, a question word. And this is not a question word anymore when we remove the tilde, right? Cuánto, or here, cuánto. So these are some few examples of how we use these words. In the next lesson, I will show you some more sentences where I'll give you some examples using dónde and dónde. ¿Quién? ¿Quién? ¿Qué? ¿Qué? ¿Cuál? ¿Cuál? Okay? So you don't confuse these words when it has a tilde and when it does not have a tilde. So I hope I see you next time. Bye. In today's lesson, I will show you some examples in sentences using the words we had seen in the previous lesson, right? We had learned the question words in Spanish and how these question words are used with a different meaning when we remove the tilde, right? This little line, the small line that is on top of some vowels. So these question words, what we usually know as the W words in English, these words we can write them down the same without the tilde, and the meaning changes. The places where we use these words changes. So in the previous class I showed you examples and sentences using these four up here, and now I will show you these four down here, how we use them. In black I have written the sentences in Spanish, and in green the sentences in English. Let's begin with ¿Dónde lo guardaste? This donde, right, with a tilde. When it has the tilde, right, it always implies an inquisition, an interrogation. We are inquiring something. Mainly inquiring, because sometimes the question may not be a question sentence, but still the word can imply an inquisition, right? So, ¿dónde lo guardaste? Where did you keep it? Right? Here the word lo means it. Right? Where did you keep it? Guardaste is did you keep. Comes from verb guardar, to keep. The ending te is the suffix that shows that this is the conjugation of the verb guardar in past tense for the second person of the singular, for tú or you. ¿Dónde lo guardaste? Where did you keep it? Now we will see how we use donde here in the second case without the tilde. Lo guardé donde tenía que ir. I kept it where it had to go. Okay? I kept it where it had to go. This donde is not inquiring anything, but it's providing some information, right? That's why it does not carry a tilde on the O. Then we have ¿Quién vino anoche? ¿Quién vino anoche? Who came last night? Anoche means literally last night. So, who came last night? This is ¿quién here, right? With a tilde. We can also use ¿quiénes if we want to speak in plural, right? If we want to ask who came last night, implying many people, we would ask ¿quiénes? If we ask ¿quién, we usually mean one person, right? Although usually also the singular can be used for generalization, for one or for many. So, ¿quién vino anoche? And quien pueda venir, que venga. Quien pueda venir, que venga. This means come whomever can, right? Let's translate it word by word. Whomever can come, come. Then come, okay? Whomever can come, come. In this case, quien is not an inquisition, right? That's why it doesn't carry a tilde. Then we use que and que. Que as inquisition is ¿qué es esto? ¿Qué es esto? What is this? Esto means literally this. And ¿qué is what? Now, ¿qué without the tilde? We have esto es lo que mencioné ayer. Esto es lo que mencioné ayer. This is that which I mentioned yesterday. Okay? This is that which I mentioned yesterday. In this case, que is used like a connecting word, right? Lo would be that. Que would be which, referring to that. You see, this is more like a connecting word. But this is one case of que that is not inquisition word. It's not what, okay? Another case of que without the tilde is the one below. And this is the most common and frequent use of que. Dijo que sí. Dijo comes from verb decir, or verb to say. But here it is conjugated in past tense for the third person of the singular, for he, she. Right? So this can be he said that yes, or he said yes. Okay? He said yes. He said that he will go, okay? Dijo que sí. Dijo que va a ir. Dijo que sí. Dijo que va a ir. He said that yes, or he said yes. He said that he will go, okay? Ir is the verb to go. Va a would be like will go, right? This is the future tense. So here the word que means that. He said that something, okay? Now, our last example, cuál and cuál. Cuál with a tilde for inquisition will be ¿cuál te gusta más? ¿Cuál te gusta más? This means which one do you like more? Right? So, ¿cuál is which or which one? with a tilde, yes? Without the tilde, the second case is we have two uses of this word. El hombre con el cual hablaste. The man, hombre is man, with which, con el cual would be, con is with, el cual would be which, hablaste is you spoke or you talked, the man with whom or with which you spoke, right, or with which you talked. El hombre con el cual hablaste. So el cual would be with which or with whom. Another case is el perro está quieto cual una planta. In this case, cual without the tilde means as, right? So, perro is dog. Quieto means quiet. It's very similar, you see, the writing is very similar. And planta is plant. So, the dog is quiet as a plant. Yes, this would be the word-by-word translation. El perro está quieto cual una planta. And cual is actually not the most frequent word here. Cual is not the most frequent or most used word for this meaning, right? Here, cual means as, right? El perro está quieto cual una planta. The dog is quiet as a plant. Okay? This is one of the meanings of the word cual without the tilde, but most frequently we use the word como here, this como without the tilde, right? That also means as. We've seen this example, or we saw that in the previous lesson. In the previous lesson we've spoken about these words, right? With a tilde and without the tilde. So in our previous class I showed you how and when we use the word como without the tilde. And here, for example, we could perfectly replace the word cual with the word como, and we would say el perro está quieto como una planta. El perro está quieto como una planta. The dog is quiet as a plant. So both ways would be correct, using cual and using como, but most frequently we use como in all scenarios, right? So this one would be the most typical way of speaking and writing. Okay? So this is all with this topic, and so next class I'll probably show you some Spanish phrase, some very useful Spanish phrase, and I'll talk about it and I'll show you some examples. Okay, so I see you next class. Bye.